Welcome back to Go Local Live here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. We're here now with Kelly Nevins. She's the Executive Director of the Women's Fund of Rhode Island, here to talk about Black Women's Equal Pay Day, as well as the lack of female leadership at the executive level. So thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yesterday marked Black Women's Equal Pay Day. Tell us a little bit about the significance of the date.
Sure. So Equal Pay Day, most people seem to recognize it in April, and that generally is for women of all walks of life. It measures the day that women start to make the same amount that men earned in the previous year. So unfortunately, what we know is that for women of color, equity is a much larger issue, and there are much later dates throughout the year for women of color when they start to make what the average white male would make in a year. So it takes more than half of a following year for a Black woman to catch up to what a white man makes in the workplace.
That really is incredible, because we're well past the halfway point of the year, and
yeah.
if we think about it in those by that standard, we might as well have just not, like, Black women might as well have just not showed up to work for half the year.
Yeah, it's really difficult for women of color, and particularly for Black women. We know in Rhode Island that white women and women across the board will make 88 cents on the white male's dollar, but when, again, you start looking at women of color, a Black woman will be making 77 cents on the white woman's dollar, and if you, unfortunately, are a Latina woman in Rhode Island, you're making less than 50 cents on the white woman's dollar. So
wow.
It's really challenging for our sisters of color, and it's something that when we talk about workplace equity, we really want to address from multiple different levels.
So this isn't a new issue. The whole pay disparity has been a big issue for a long time now. Why is it still so pervasive?
Well, there's a number of different issues, and some of it has to do with unconscious bias in the workplace. We have seen lots of studies where right from the get-go, men are hired at a higher rate than women, even though women have 57% of the college degrees to begin with. So right from the get-go, you start seeing more men in the workplace. And then as you start to go through the management ranks, at every level, you start to see women drop off. So that by the time you get to the executive C-suite, only 1 in 5 folks in the C-suite are women, and only 1 in 30 are women of color. So when we heard about the news about the CEO of PepsiCo stepping down, that unfortunately was really sad news for women in the industry, just because, again, less than 5% of Fortune 500 companies are run by women.
And of course, we did just see that she will be replaced by a man.
Yes, that's right. That's right. In fact, we have seen this year a drop from, there were 32 women who were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies last year. Now we're at 23. So we're losing ground, unfortunately.
So it seems like this is kind of a continuous cycle, if you think about it. Like you were saying, there's fewer women who are hired, which means fewer women are promoted, which means fewer women are doing the hiring, which continues that problem of unconscious bias.
Yeah, and so when we talk about right from the get-go, and we're talking about workplace policies, when you're thinking about hiring, how are you trying to eliminate any unconscious bias that may be coming into even just the hiring process? Just by virtue of doing unconscious bias training with all of your employees, that's one way to start addressing those situations. And then, are you, when you're looking at resumes, are you doing it name blind so that you're not judging from the name that, oh, this might be a woman, and then making some assumptions about a woman that you know nothing about because you haven't actually talked to this person. If you're using hiring panels, do you have women on your hiring panels who are helping you to make the decisions about who is, and ask the questions about who is being hired? And then once you get into the workplace, what kinds of policies do you have in place, understanding that both women and men have childcare responsibilities, but that men often are let off the hook for taking care of children. And also this being the sandwich generation, where a lot of women not only have children that they need to care for, but also elderly parents. They're the ones that the caregiving responsibilities typically fall into in our culture. That's not to say that women should not go to work. But what we are saying is that, are there ways for your workplace to be more flexible? Do you require that your employees put in 70 and 80 hours a week to get ahead? And if you do, then you're crossing off a number of people who might be able to do just as good a job on a lesser amount of time, particularly because women are really good at juggling lots of different balls. But if it's about face time, and men typically are able to stay in the workplace for face time longer than women, rather than flex time where women can get different projects done at different times, this is something that helps to engender that bias even more.
And we see as well, it's also not a matter of women who aren't asking for these promotions. What stops them from moving up, even though women seek promotions as much or sometimes more than men do?
Mm-hmm. It's true. There are plenty of studies that show that women are asking for promotions, but they're not being considered for them. So the question is, when you are considering people for promotions, are you making the decisions to promote people based on actual data? Or just this person's a good fit, and I see him or her in the workplace all the time, and we play golf together, they're a great guy. There's nothing wrong with necessarily thinking about the people that you have the most close contact with, but are you giving people who might have responsibilities that prevent them from, again, being in front of you all the time? Are there ways for them to show that they have the credentials to do the job that you're looking for? So are you looking on paper at what they're accomplishing and using that as your way for actually making promotions?
And I know a lot of times it's difficult to tell when it comes to pay disparity that you're being paid less than your male counterparts or even your older counterparts. What can we do as women to advocate for ourselves and to push for the ending of pay disparities and lack of promotions and also to help promote our female coworkers?
Yeah, sure. Well, number one, we teach women when we're teaching negotiation skills classes to do a scan, a search in the community for similarly typed jobs and make sure that they understand what their value is if they were to go out in the world. So being able to understand that on average, the job that I do, whatever that job title is and the responsibilities are, on average, people are making X amount. And are you making that amount? And if you're not, being able to use that data, which you can get from places like salary.com, being able to use that data to be able to have a conversation. Are you encouraging your workplace to do audits to make sure that all of their employees are being paid appropriately for the types of positions that they're in? And if there are severe disparities between what men and women are making who have similar skill sets, similar seniority, maybe that's an opportunity for the business to make things right. From a community standpoint, we work with a number of women who have become advocates for things like fair pay. Last year, we helped to promote the Fair Pay Act in Rhode Island. Unfortunately, it didn't get passed in the version that we had hoped that it would be. And we do hope that we'll see it go back into the General Assembly next year. This Fair Pay Act would, number one, make it illegal for hiring managers to ask for what historical salary has been before offering a job.
To stop the proliferation of being underpaid.
Absolutely. In addition, it also means that it gives women an opportunity to be able to have conversations with their employers about what's wrong and be able to hold them accountable for it if they can prove that there are actual disparities. Now again, we are not advocating for giving women a raise just by virtue of the fact that they're women. However, if they have similar skill sets, if they are doing comparable jobs, they should be getting comparable pay. And it's really important to use that language, comparable, because in many ways we have created a society where this job in this industry is exactly the same as this job in this industry, but because this industry is filled by men, it tends to be paid a lot more. So, similar skill sets, similar competencies should be paid similarly.
Absolutely. And so you did mention that the number of female CEOs is on the decline. Mm-hmm. Do you see an end in sight? Do you see issues being rectified in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years?
You know, it's hard to tell. What I would say is that the fact that we have so many women who are running for office right now gives me great hope. Regardless of what political party somebody is affiliated with, we know from research that women who are in office tend to make family-friendly policies. We also know that when women get into the C-suite, that they are helping their businesses to be even better. And in fact, for every 10% increase in equity within the workplace, there is a converse 1 to 2% increase in net revenue. So when we have more women who are in office, who are making policies that are family friendly, for example, extending paid family leave, both to men and women, this allows people to take care of their family issues and not have to worry about losing their job. Meanwhile, the workplace is not having turnover and having hiring costs that are associated with that person taking a temporary leave. When we see those types of policies in place, we tend to see that women are doing much better fiscally.
And really quick, before we wrap up, do you see issues like paid family leave? Does that also hold women back from, oh, well, if I get this promotion, then I won't have time for my kids? Like you mentioned needing more flexibility.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, again, women in our culture tend to have the more family care responsibilities. We also know that from women in the workplace that if you compare a woman leader in the workplace to a man leader, she usually has 2 full-time jobs. She's taking care of business, and then she's also taking care full-time of her family, whereas men usually have somebody that they can rely on at home to take care of those issues. We would say that, you know, community-wide, when we see policies that are family-friendly, we also see that more men tend to have uptake in those pieces. So the fact that Rhode Island was one of the few states to get paid family leave, and the fact that men started taking advantage of it, means that there is an opportunity for our community to change a little bit of its culture in a positive way.
Well, hopefully that won't be as much of an issue in the years to come. Hopefully we'll get there, but thanks so much for clearing all that up and explaining. You know, a lot of people think equal pay day is in April, but it's so different for so many people, and it really, the more education we have,
absolutely,
the
and
better
if
it'll be.
I could just pump one thing up. We do have an event that's coming up in September. It's our September 20th Intersectionality and Feminism Cocktails and Conversation. It's sponsored by IGT. This event will basically look at women of color, but also transgendered women, women of lower economic means, and what it means to be a working person in intersectional society, and how can we help everyone and not just be focused on that, you know, sort of biggest average. So thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with our next guest, Patricia Morgan, in just a few minutes here on GoLocal Live.